Maybe I should grab like a really expensive model and be like, whoa! Whoa!
I mean, most people do that every day anyway, so there's always a...
Yeah, people like come to the store and they're like, it looks like you just like shock them in the stomach or whatever, and they pick up a box set or whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, whoa.
How's it going?
Didn't see you there.
Yeah.
We're discussing today the ever-present topic.
Always. Will never go away.
It will never change.
Yeah.
It never has.
Yeah.
Are Games Workshop models too expensive?
Are they?
Are they? Oh, I thought you'd have. Well, you know what? And I'd start off with the question I'll pose to you. Mm-hmm. Compared to what?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. You have to compare. People like to.
The word expensive literally like when you look at the definitionally, it's in comparison to something.
Correct.
Yeah. Otherwise, It needs context essentially, right?
Yeah. So, are they the most expensive? I don't know. They're up there, obviously. I'll preface again everything like lots of people come in and sometimes they don't know what they're either new to it or they don't know anything about Warhammer, and I'll tell them very flatly, I'm like, it's not cheap. Like it's not. But then again, it's depends on and relevance. Again, back to like your first point is like, what are you comparing it to? So. So whether it's against other minis or other hobbies, it's kind of right there with them. Like if you are whatever it is, if you're an enthusiast in pick a sport, pick a other activity. It could be if you're into computer games, if you're into playing even like golf or hockey or something like.
I always laugh at that because I'm always like, man. I pay my ice fees for like once a week for an hour for like one season. It can be like $400 or $500.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and you got your exercise out of it and whatever. Yeah. But you can argue two ways. Like at least with the Warhammer, you have a tangible thing that generally doesn't really go bad. That's other discussions people can get into, like, but they change the rules and things. But generally speaking, your collection is there with you as long as you want it to be.
Games Workshop isn't coming around the house to pick up your models.
They're not.
Like, give it back.
So that's a discussion of like experiences versus whatever. But I would say in general terms against other things, whatever you want to call it. Magic, other minis. I think they're right where they kind of should be. I don't know.
Yeah, let's take a deeper dive into that. So we've got a couple of other miniature games on our wall, and I just picked a couple to kind of give like a bit of a broad strokes comparison. So the first way we'll break it down is looking at like the per model sort of thing. So like looking at your sort of like regular sort of grunt sized character, and sort of like how that compares across the board because. And we're going to kind of talk about this through a couple different lenses, but the first lens is like purely objectively a miniature building hobby where you build and paint a model. Yeah. So you look at a game like Corvus Belli's Infinity, and one model averages around the sort of like $15 to $17 mark. Now, granted, that's gone up a little in the last couple of years. They have less controlled costs because of their pewter that they still use.
They use pewter mostly. Yeah, they've been trying to get away from it, but at the end of the day, still
it is what it is.
Mostly pewter.
Yeah. You got games like Marvel Crisis Protocol where models can range from like $25 to $30 a model
per model. Yeah.
And then you got stuff on the low end like a D&D sort of like Nosers pre-constructed little vinyl figure. Yeah. And they're like $4 or whatever each. Yeah. Yeah. And games are kind of in the middle there. Like they're sort of like at the $7-ish range. They can be a little higher or a little lower than that.
Depends on what it is. Yeah. There's obviously some examples where they're more or less, but you have to average it out, I guess.
Obviously not an armature or whatever.
Not an armature. No. Yeah. But that goes back to our previous video about how their pricing model works or whatever. But you'd have to average it out because obviously you have boxes with 10 dudes, 5 dudes, 20 dudes, 3 dudes, 1 dude, and you have to take that all and average it out, I guess.
And I'm going to get a lot of heat for saying this. Okay? And I'd be like, this guy's such a fanboy or whatever, man. Like, I've been doing the hobby a long time. Yeah. I paint other games too. Yeah. And I've always said this, and I still hold the value. If you're a painter, if you like to paint, and you spend your time on your models, because that's where the real value in hobbies like this come from. Like in terms of you getting good value for your money. Yes. Games Workshop is a pretty good deal. Like overall, you could buy a box of Space Marines and spend like 30 hours painting them if you wanted to. Yeah. For like $70.
Yeah, that's true. Like the return. Sometimes it's another. Obviously, Chris and I are polished salespeople when it comes to selling Warhammer to parents or to anyone. and the return on investment is actually pretty good compared to most hobbies and things. So whatever it is, obviously there's some like the idea that but you do have to do all of it, like build, paint, and play. And if you do all those things, it's not unheard of. I mean, think all of you old world fans and players like that have still kept your armies.
Yeah.
Think of the return on investment on those collections. Like you may have spent hundreds or thousands. Like
not the guy who burnt his army, though.
Not that guy. 20 years ago, that guy's really stupid.
He lit money on fire.
You could have at least sold it or whatever. That money invested 20, 30 years ago or etc. Like you're still reaping the rewards. So that's pretty incredible. So generally speaking, yeah, like most of the model kits, like if you take the holistic approach, like I think Chris and I both try and be like,
objective.
No, just like role models for, which would have to do with like, like I bought. And I've been built, and been working on my like cities. So Sigmar Army, for example, since September. So like September, October, November, December, January, February, March was like 8-9 months or whatever. And even then, I'm gonna add to it. It's probably gonna roll like almost take a full calendar year before I like finish my collection or whatever. Sure. Like that, and that's like hundreds of hours of entertainment that I'm getting out of it, and lots of games and everything. Like it's for the money I invested. Like I don't know what the MSRP of my army was. Let's say it was like $600 or something. It's like pretty good. Like
that's hard. That is actually hard to beat.
You break that down per month. It's like $60, $70 a month. Like that's for all those hours I'm getting back. It's pretty good. So again, comes back to what you need. I find
where this starts to pivot, I think, which is where you're going, is when you're not doing all those things.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. So this is where, and I think, and this is where I'll get more flack or whatever coming at you. The more gamer-focused people, the people that aren't necessarily painting their models or spending much time painting their models, tend to feel a bit more price-sensitive because they're churning and burning faster, right? So they're buying a collection, whether it's 40K or AOS or one of these other big games, and they're playing all the time with them, and maybe like every 4 to 6 months they're going on to the next thing really quickly, or they're buying new units to supplement like the new data slate changes that are happening. They're constantly changing their armies and updating, and it becomes more about a byproduct of gaming versus just doing this like all-inclusive sort of hobby experience, which Games Workshop isn't necessarily selling you that, right?
No, but what's interesting is they're aware of it. So, for example,
they are very aware of it.
Their chapter-approved books and seasonal data sleets and things. These are basically battle passes that they are like offering you to buy. So if you like playing lots of like competitive Warhammer, you are going to probably feel it the most because you're like, oh, I need to make changes all the time. This thing I just bought isn't good anymore, whatever. So, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, until they make a drastic change, which I don't think they will, because they do sell a lot of books, unless they go full digital. Unlike a video game, they can't make a change that's like free. Basically, it's not as simple as a guy making a change in the code in the background and then deploying a patch to everyone's clients, and then there you go. We've just nerfed this or up powered something else. They have to like release it in some sort of like document, and then the chapter proof things are kind of the seasonal or yearly books are. They're also like, if we're going to spend all this time tweaking our game, maintaining our game, we're going to make a buck on it too. So. Sure. I get it. Like I've seen lots of people that chase that dream or chase that thing, and they're generally like, nah, this is crazy. But this reinforces again why you should, if you can, hold on to your minis. Like selling them off is like the thing that probably
don't do it unless you need the money.
Yeah, like, that's
it really
what I always tell people.
Most. Don't do it unless you need the money.
Yeah.
And so going back to our earlier point, I'll try to make a little bit more of a fair argument because. Just comparing minis to minis, I think, we are excluding the gaming kind of picture of that. So, obviously, Warhammer 40,000 and Age of Sigmar and, Age of Darkness and the Old World have a higher cost to play than a game like Infinity or Marvel Crisis Protocol because the amount of models you need to buy is much bigger.
Yeah, to start.
Mm-hmm. But I will, push back a little bit on that in the sense that Games Workshop also releases games that compete in those brackets as well, right? So you have like games like Kill Team, Necromunda, Warcry, and when you compare the prices of those products, they're actually pretty comparable in terms of what do I need to spend to play. Kill Team you could pretty much play with any of those Kill Team box sets. They're like $200. that come
the
out.
starter boxes.
Yeah,
whatever,
you
the
can
two
kind of,
players.
they come with a board, they come with some models, and you can pretty much play right away, right? So,
And then you just buy a team once in a while if you want.
and
that's your whole
we always joke about this too, because like a lot of times we got this with like Malifaux players or like Infinity guys. They're like, we like this game because it's cheap or it's less expensive than Games Workshop, and I'm like,
yeah,
it's a number.
yeah.
It's a weird thing to say that, like to like something for that reason, but also none of them act that way, right? So even if you could build like a 300 point ITS or 350 point ITS force for Infinity, nobody stops at 350 points.
No. Yeah.
What you see most of the time is people collect whole ranges of forces,
Tons of things, yeah.
tons and tons. They overbuy to the point where they could have collected a Warhammer 40,000.
Oh yeah, it just feels like, because you're taking these smaller bites, it feels like it's my money's going farther. Like I think Marvel's a great example of that.
Sure.
Like a shelf of Marvel is just as expensive, maybe more expensive than a Warhammer army. It's like it's unreal.
It's crazy, yeah.
For like 30 dudes or something. It's like it's
But it feels
awesome.
different because you can chuck Juggernaut in, and right away, he has a big impact, and and he's 1/5 of your army roster or whatever, right? So it's an interesting discussion. I think just if you can take anything out of this video, I think it would be sort of like, think about, if you feel like things are expensive, why is that? Is there a part of the hobby you're not participating in as much? Or is it just like, and I feel this way sometimes, like, I wish I could have more or something, right? Like, because that's a common human thing to feel, right? Like, I wish I could buy more things.
I'm sure there's going to be some sentiment. I'm sure there's going to be, so many people watch this video. There's going to be some fire in the comments, I can imagine. There's always some disenfranchised people, some people that, like, jumped into Warhammer and then lost interest for various reasons. Or a very common thing we get is... people are like, I don't want to give GW any money or whatever. Joke's on you, they're going to get it anyway. But so there's those reasons too. But I'm always like, generally speaking, I think so there's a few actually small things to consider as well, to kind of layer it on top is Games Workshop as a company is like, I would agree, or I mean, obviously I would anyway, that the price of the models or per model or in general what you're investing in with Warhammer is not as bad as you think. I think it's fair, generally speaking. Also because, like, the other thing you have to consider is, because of what it, let's call it expensive, because it's expensive, it also holds its value very well.
This is true. This is one thing that's never talked about.
The cheaper games, they almost hold zero value. As soon as you take it off the lot, so to speak, you are getting, if you take a $70 Infinity model kit off the wall and take it home and build it a little and then decide to change your mind, it's worth probably like $5, like or whatever you want to call it, on the secondary market. Yeah, there's no...
The reality is the player pool you're drawing from is much smaller.
Is much smaller, Whereas the Warhammer, you could probably, like, if it's like basically doing box and maybe you just took the shrink wrap off, like
65%,
you could get 60, maybe 70, or even more. If it's like a popular item that everyone needs in their army right now, you could just get full value or whatever, or more, or they're the only product that gets to take advantage of the so-called scalping. That's how robust their business is that you can literally buy something, pre-order something, and flip it in 5 minutes for more than you paid.
There's literally businesses on eBay that solely exist to scalp Games Workshop things. It's remarkable.
It's pretty unreal. And the second point I wanted to make is, and you're kind of seeing it, is Games Workshop will continually, like any big company that rules its industry, is they're going to continue to push, as much as they can, because like that's part of part of the business of making money, is they're going to slowly. So I mean, that could be another discussion, is like, are they approaching a saturation point? I think sometimes they do test it a little bit, and then they rein it back on other things, but. Generally speaking, if you take all of the like historical changes, I feel like they just do it. They're fairly calculated with it. I think they kind of just like a little bit here, a little bit there, and they try and, something most companies don't do, that whether it's worth anything to you or not, they try and actually tell people this is going to happen. They literally say, hey, this March we're gonna do a little increase on everything. Here's your chance to buy it cheap while you can. Like most companies wouldn't do that at all, right? I would.
The only last, I kind of forgot to mention this when we were talking about the other comparisons, is the one comparison people don't make, which I think is relevant a lot of the time, is comparing Games Workshop to Games Workshop. So like going back in time and like saying historically, are they out of pace for where they've been historically? And Jay and I are in a kind of pretty unique situation. We've both been collecting Warhammer for far too long. I've been buying since like the mid '90s.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember walking into a Games Workshop, and I still get the warm fuzzies or whatever thinking about it. But with the red carpet and the blisters all over the wall, and like you two metal guys in a blister for like $16 to $18.
Yeah.
And this is cool. Metal Dreadnought, $65.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, a Battle Force, cool. That's over $100.
Yeah.
Starter set, $100.
Yeah.
So and these are $19.95, right? So you can make the arguments, the material has gotten cheaper, but the production has gotten more expensive in some ways. The model quality's gone up.
Employs way more people.
Well, of course, the costs of doing business. Yeah. And, I won't defend, like, their profit margins have increased. 100%
Sure.
they have. They're a money-making machine.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's what business is supposed to
I
do.
think generally the one thing that at least I will say, you get, and again, you can have your opinion on this, obviously. I think they still generally, as much as they can, try and their core thing is they're always just trying to really just make a cool box of models most of the time. Sometimes they don't get it right with the rules, which is what it is. I think that's probably the one part of their overall offerings that is probably the weakest right now, is how they deal with not so much their core rules, but their like army metas and stuff. I think that gives a lot of people consternation, the constant changes and right now there's a whole Dark Angels this and now they're not strong enough, and then they make something too strong, and then everyone it's very hard to please everyone there. But generally speaking, whatever models they set their minds to that they release, people are generally like, I want it, I need it, it's awesome, and they seem to nail that every time. But so you don't get too many I just think of stuff like whether it's Wizards of the Coast with Magic or whatever, where they make some kind of just ridiculous product that's just pure gouge. I think of their 35th or 30th.
Oh yeah.
Magic,
a grand or whatever.
Magic 30 was like, we're gonna give you Magic 30 is almost as if the old world equivalent would be old world if old world was if they sold the Bretonian box for $1,000 or something. I don't know.
And there was numbered boxes, or
and there was only one of 100 or something. Where you're just looking at it as a consumer, and you're like, this is just the dumbest thing, and I hate you, and go die in a fire or whatever kind of reaction. Instead, we got just love or whatever, and I think maybe we can finally end on this. There's always an extra addendum or whatever, but if we're thinking of whether it's too expensive or not, I mean, let's look at the old world release. People were more than willing to spend very high prices on old models.
Well,
no problem spending $70 on 3 Grail Knights, or
you can hate them as much as you want,
whatever.
If customers are putting upward pressure on prices, if they're selling 3 Metal Ushapi for $100 and they're selling out, it's hard as a corporation that you're responsible to shareholders to say, I think we overcharged on those.
Yeah.
We sold out in 3 minutes.
We sold out in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
People, the demand is...
The demand's through the roof. Until demand drops, which it's
Yes.
there's no sign of that slowing down. We're gonna keep seeing those prices push upwards, right?
Yeah.
And I think I'd like to end on sort of just a little bit of advice, I guess, because like you said, we try to be role models for people in the hobby, and I think one of the main reasons we don't feel that sort of oh man, the hobby's so expensive, is because we get a lot out of what we do. We tend to buy an army and see it through to the end. Mm-hmm. And that, like you said, that process of painting it up, playing with it, enjoying it, finishing it, putting it in a display cabinet, really just enjoying the whole process. It you don't feel like you got ripped off.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
And the more the closer you can get, no, we're not saying Jay and I are close to this threshold. The closer you can get to finishing the models you buy, the better you'll feel about the sort of transaction you're having, essentially, right?
Yeah. You'll always whether it's finishing a video game or finishing a box of models, when you go to buy the next one, you'll be like, that's fine. You kind of this is a thing we used to say, and this depends on your situation or whatever. But generally speaking, I think the healthiest thing is whatever it is, whatever your financial thing is, you have a budget, obviously, if you can. And so whatever your entertainment budget is, or whatever your hobby budget is, it's supposed to be no, I don't have to spend this on these models. It's, I get to buy these models.
I get to, yeah.
So because I'm fortunate enough to have that budget available. So sometimes that means you get a box instead of 3 or whatever. Now, here's the joke, though. Even if you could buy the 3, would you be happier? Because it's not like you get to really do, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to finish them faster or whatever. So that's a kind of a joke I have here, because obviously lots of people, friends, family, long-term customers. They know Chris and I obviously have been owning the shop for a long time.
Yeah.
So, yes, I have full disclosure. I get to buy Warhammer at cost, which is not as cheap as you think it is. But does that really like, where's the advantage there? Like, I guess I could technically own twice as much or whatever you want to call it, but like, it doesn't fulfill me. I actually don't overbuy as much as you think I would, because I have no reason to. What would I do with
your
it?
hours that you
time
can use it,
or
and that's the thing you realize over time, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing you realize over time. It doesn't make you happier to own more of it.
No, it doesn't. Yeah,
it makes you happier to use the stuff you buy, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I if you look at I new stuff comes in and I'm just like, that's cool, and I don't like, and also too, like, it's still not free. Like,
it's not free.
So yeah. I still have to maintain some control, but generally speaking, yeah, I don't. I buy. I kind of, what I do is I like, or Chris and I are similar. We kind of accumulate some hobby budget, and then we might do like bigger swoops once a year. We buy an army or something, and then that's it. There's not really a ton of extra stuff going on, and of course, the more I overbuy, the less money in my own pocket. So it's like, it's nonsense. Like, there's no reason to go crazy. You just enjoy the things, and believe me, it's not like I'm hoarding limited editions of things or whatever. I'm basically like, I'd rather sell them to customers and make a buck, because it's not an easy business. So yeah, it's the more is not going to make you happier or better. It's like,
there you go. We got a moral in this video.
Yeah. It's not.
People like this getting preachy.
Yeah.
Well, we hope you liked that video. I'm sure you're already commenting before you even finish this. But if you haven't, throw us a comment about how you feel about Games Workshop prices. Are we being fanboys, or are we being realistic, or are we just like out of our minds or whatever? Let us know. Subscribe if you can, and we also have a Patreon where you can get more involved in how we make our videos and give us a little bit of input going forward. We appreciate you. Take care.
Thanks.